Well, kia ora koutou katoa, no mai tauti mai, and welcome to this webinar on Rochester and Rutherford Hall. My name is Ryan Thomas, and I'm the Domestic Student Recruitment Manager here at Te Whare Wānanga o Waitaha, the University of Canterbury. And before we kick off on our webinar tonight, and I hand over to the principal of Rochester and Rutherford Hall, I just have a few housekeeping points for you. Obviously, tonight's webinar is a chance for you to connect and hear directly from Stephen and Rochester and Rutherford Hall. There's an opportunity for you to ask plenty of questions, and you can either do that by opening up your mic, so unmuting yourself, or using the chat box function on this Zoom meeting. You would also notice that this webinar is also being recorded. There's a few people that can't make it tonight and obviously are interested in hearing about Rochester and Rutherford Hall, but we'll also make sure that you receive a copy if you would like one after the webinar. So I can see that I think Stephen is with us, so I'm going to hand over to him.
All right, good evening. Just welcome. It is unique that we're in this situation where, a large number of you, haven't had the opportunity to come to Canterbury and have a look at the hall. If we do get time, there's I think a very apt video which shows a student hosting a tour of the hall from the road, through the dining room, the study centre, the recreation room, and into her room, and also the involvement with one of our tutors here. So we look after 192 students. They are first year students, and they come from throughout New Zealand. To fill the hall with 192 students, I generally have to make offers to around about 230, 240 students, because from my experience, there are a number of students that apply for more than one university in New Zealand, and we tend to lose a number of them very soon in the process, where they obviously collect scholarships to other universities. So when you look at the capacity of this hall, don't just simply go, they only need 192 students. From my experience, we need at least 40 more than that. So what I do in relation to selecting students, I look for a diverse group of students. So the first thing I do is I balance the gender here as much as I possibly can. So generally we end up with sort of about 96 to 98 of one and 94 of the other, or in an ideal world we would have 96 of each. And we generally end up with sort of an equal number of North Islanders and South Islanders. Half of the students tend to be engineering students, but that's obviously because of the College of Engineering and the university. But we have all the other degrees are covered: science, law, commerce, arts, product design, speech and language, fine arts, social work, health science, music, teaching. Every degree that obviously the university offers, we do have students here. The main thing I look for in your application, and I have started reading them but not making final selections, is the first thing I look at is your academic qualifications at school. But you don't have to be the ducks of the school. I just make a judgment call on whether you're going to be capable of getting a university degree. And so if your NCA grades have slipped from level 1 to level 2, I think it's really important that you explain why. And sometimes that can be a health reason. sometimes it can be something that's impacted on you to do that. But we do look at your academic grades for a start. You don't have to be excellence at both levels. But the first thing we want to do is to make sure that you can actually cope with your degree. And then we look at all sorts of things, from sport to community to cultural. People have this perception that we're full of duxes and head prefects. It's far from the truth. There are just people across all range of activities, from, you know, sport, culture, community. I mean, one of our most recent purchases is a new grand piano. I'm looking for somebody to actually play that. So the question on your application, if you have not submitted it yet, that we put a lot of emphasis on, is what contribution you're going to make to life in the hall here. So we're looking for people who contribute in some way to life here. So you talk about your family. That doesn't, I mean, that is important, but the main thing we're actually after is what contribution you're going to make to life in the hall. We have got our resident tutors in place for next year. So we have 6 new tutors. They live on site here. And 3 of those are male, 3 are female. And their main role here is pastoral. And they next year, the 3 male tutors are all engineering students. They're generally 4th and 5th year students. One of the students that is a resident tutor here next year is only in his 3rd year, but he did have a gap year between high school and starting university. All of them next year are ex-R&R students, which is quite unique too. Normally we might get 3 or 4 of them, but they're all in place. They've actually been into the hall a couple of times this year, and they're about to come in and shadow one of our resident tutors this year. So pastoral care is really, really important. So in terms of staff, there's myself, there's a deputy principal, an office manager, property managers, housekeepers, catering staff. Academic tutoring is a huge emphasis here, and academic tutoring is done by most recent students. So the group of people, there's about 20 of them. They were in R&R, and they come back in and tutor the students very much on call across every paper and across every degree that we have got students here. And our average grade as a whole across this year, our grades have actually gone up because of the COVID changes to particularly the lower end people, but in most years we average out a B+ across every paper, across every student. So the grade point average for the students in the hall here is normally around 6, but this year it's crept up to about 6.3. So that's really just an introduction from me. Our fees have been set. You can find those on the website. We've got about 50 car parks here that students pay $160 a year for. We've got 2 houses adjoining the hall where students live in those if they've got some special requirement, you know, particularly students who have got lots of sport and they want their own sort of kitchen, etc. They dine in the hall, but they actually take residence in one of these houses that are just on our boundary here. So, I mean, I think that's really the thing here. And if you ask students what they like most about R&R, it's the people here. I mean, they like their fellow students. So we're governed by a trust board, which is independent of the university. And a really important thing for us this year was that during lockdown, and you would have read about this, during lockdown, the hall never charged the students fees for the time they were actually away from the hall. So it was of great concern to us that the students couldn't be resident here, but they weren't charged because of the fact that they did move back to their homes. You can stay in the hall in the holidays on request. We don't cater for the students in the holidays, but we do provide quite a bit of food so that students can avail themselves if they do stay on the holidays. Right, Ryan, that's enough introduction from me.
Thanks, Stephen. So just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, you can either open up your mic and unmute yourself and ask that question, or if you are somewhat afraid to do that, no problem, you can use the chat box and we'll make sure Stephen has that question for you for him to answer. In the meantime, while you are thinking of some questions to ask Stephen, should we check out the video of the student giving a bit of a tour of R&R?
Kia ora, I'm Amy. I'm originally from Wellington and I'm studying a Bachelor of Engineering at UC, living here at Rochester and Rutherford. I really love R&R. The community here is amazing. The dining hall is where it all happens. It is just across the road from campus. The food here is fantastic, and once a term we'll have a formal dinner where we'll celebrate student success. The study centre is open 24/7. It is a quiet and warm place to study, and there is access to academic tutorials most weekdays and in the weekends. The tutors are ex-R&R students who have already achieved excellent results in the subjects that we are studying. R&R offers lots of scholarships, including the Rutherford Hall Board Art and Photography Competition. There are 3 buildings that house the majority of our students: Fisher, Moore and Wilson. I live here in Wilson. My floor houses 14 students, 7 boys, 7 girls, with a range of South Islanders, North Islanders and a mixture of degrees. This is my room. Will is my residential tutor.
Hi Amy. As Amy's residential tutor, I look after 2 floors in the Wilson house. We have fortnightly catch-ups to make sure that everyone is settled in and well adjusted to life away from home.
We know our neighbours. Newman and Dodd House are also part of R&R. They offer a different style of accommodation for students with special commitments. The recreational room is where we spend a lot of our free time. It's where we can play games, jam out to some music, or enjoy social events. The best thing about living at R&R is the people. The students, the staff, and the tutors. They make it the most incredible experience.
Alrighty, so hopefully that gives you a good overview of what Rochester and Rutherford is like as a whole. I do have a question for you, Stephen, from Leanne. And Leanne's question is, what food do you offer on holidays? And if lockdown occurs, do students have to return home?
During the holidays, the kitchen provides all the breakfast foods, and then they provide soups, etc. for lunches, and then a series of frozen meals that students can use. But a number of the students actually start there. They've got full kitchen in the study centre, so they start their cooking situations, because one of the things that we do here is offer cooking classes for the students. So we're trying to develop their independence so that they're here for a year, and then when they leave us, they're capable of, looking after themselves. In relation to lockdown in March this year, the students from this hall all went home, but we did have plans in place if any of them couldn't actually return home, and it would have been using one of those houses on our boundary to put students in and obviously provide pastoral care and catering and all those particular facilities. Our chef manager actually stayed on site during lockdown.
Cool, thank you. And another question from Nadia, I think it is. How does Rochester and Rutherford cater for dietary requirements, for example, a vegan diet?
It caters very well. We have about 192. I think we start the year with about 30 students who are either vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, dairy-free. But when they see the options that are available, there's quite a number of them that change to be vegetarian. And I would say at the moment, there is about 50 students who have special dietary requirements. All the food is clearly labelled. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we do pride ourselves on, is that we don't want students at risk because of their allergies.
Cool, thank you. So keep those questions coming. While we're waiting on a couple of extra questions to come through, a couple of questions to keep us going. What kind of tutorial programs do you offer students from the hall, Stephen?
And every paper that's actually available, the engineering students would have tutorials in engineering, maths, chemistry, physics, computer science. The law students in law papers. The commerce students, there's a commerce tutorial on tonight. In accounting, there is the criminal justice students. I've just seen a tutorial that they're having this week. I mean, there are every range of tutorial that you can actually think of. Generally, what happens is I offer the students who have been here the opportunity to come back as an academic tutor. They get paid from the hall, and obviously it's not registered as a payment against each individual student. And quite often they'll come in for a meal, which they quite enjoy, and then they'll catch up with their students. And then as they settle in, they generally tend to set up Facebook groups, and they communicate with each other. We had a really extensive tutoring system during lockdown, where a lot of tutorials were done by our academic tutors with all their groups of students by Zoom. So lockdown did not affect the academic tutoring program that existed here.
And another question is, do you encourage students to engage with extracurricular activities such as the SVA? And that's from Jack.
Yeah, we do. The halls in Canterbury have a competition which is organised by the Student Volunteer Army, and the students' hours are accumulated. We have students that are involved in the Student Volunteer Army. Quite often a lot of the lead students have come out of this hall. So they've got a Student Volunteer Army camp on this weekend. So the students here have this real feeling about giving back to their community.
Absolutely. And yesterday, Stephen, when we caught up, we talked very much about the importance of a culture in a hall. So I guess this goes directly to Renee's question here, which is, does R&R have a point of difference from the other halls on campus?
I don't really want to comment about the other halls, but if I talk to you if I asked students here what they thought about this hall, as I said before, they enjoy the people, but they like the balance of their main focus here is academics, but they love the balance of being involved in sport, whether it be, really high competitive sport or social sport. They also enjoy the ability to be involved in some cultural activities. So it's just about balancing what they do outside the university lecture program.
Absolutely. And a question here is, what's the actual life like in the hall? Are you more free, or is it a boarding school situation?
No, it's It's not a boarding school situation. You're actually allowed to develop as a young person, and it's very self-regulating. What I mean by that is, if the law students had an essay that was due tomorrow, then they just simply talk to the other students on their floor and say, can you just tone your noises down? We've got something on, and they actually respect each other. The culture on a floor here is really important. So, as Amy said in that video, she was on a floor where there were 14 students, 7 males, 7 females, probably 7 North Islanders, 7 South Islanders, 7 engineers, a couple of science students, a couple of law students, a couple of commerce students, and another student. So there's a real mixture of people on a floor, and they get incredibly tight as a group on a floor because of the way they look out for each other.
Absolutely. And Logan wants to know, are there any restrictions on bringing things like a kettle or mini fridge into your room?
No, you don't. On each floor there's a kitchenette where there's hot water, and the only students, there's a refrigerator on each floor, but you don't have a refrigerator in your room unless you have a medical reason like diabetes.
Yeah.
And we provide the fridge.
Right. Handy. And a question from James is, what sort of things are you looking for in terms of contributions to hall life?
Anything where you get yourself involved in the community here and get yourself involved. The University of Canterbury has a really extensive club system. So there's about 300 clubs, and most students here belong to at least 5 or 6 clubs, whether they be the degrees they're studying. The engineers belong to NSOC, the law students belong to LawSoc, so they belong to a sort of an academic club, and then they'll belong to the ski club or the whatever sports club. So what we're looking for is people who come out of their rooms, engage with each other in the community here, whether it be in the dining room, whether it be outside playing sport. So you just want people who contribute to the life of the hall. For instance, this Sunday, there's 80 of them who are going to Mount Hutt for an R&R ski trip. In October, the hall students, they've organised a wellness week where the whole theme during the week is about looking out for each other, and they finish the week by going to Hamner Springs for the day.
Cool. And of course, Hamner Springs is a very popular place to go to when you're down here in Canterbury, so nice and close. A question from Sam is, how do you go about allocating car parks if there's only 50 and 192 students?
Well, not all 192 students have motor vehicles. There's no real reason to have one unless you've got, a sports commitment. Some students have part-time jobs, not a lot, but some of them have cars for those. A lot of the hockey players that are here, because they have to travel for hockey, will have cars. So what happens is, on October the 1st, we make offers, and then you have a 3-week period to confirm whether you want a place here. We choose a date once the offer process is stabilised. We choose a date. It's normally in early November, and we offer car parks for sale on that particular day, so that we've actually got a stable 192 students. So people who've been made late offers, if we have people who decline places. So everybody has an opportunity. And generally we probably get, about 2 or 3 extra students who require car parks. It's not 140. There's a lot of people who obviously don't have cars here. There's people who decide they need a car during the year. So, I mean, we work out a system where we try and help them get a university car park and then help them with the subsidy of the cost of that. And some of their car parks are only about sort of 50 metres away from the hall.
Yeah, absolutely. Right across the road.
Yeah.
And a question here, an extensive question is, how does the bathroom system work and how does the sharing work? And also a question about the laundry facility set up too.
Okay. So what we're doing at the moment, one of our houses here has got brand new bathrooms in it. It was completed over the last Christmas break. And over this Christmas break, we actually have another house where new bathrooms are being installed. So each floor in the house has got enough bathrooms and showers so that there's a ratio of 1 shower toilet for every 4 students. They are mixed gender, but students obviously, I mean, that's a pretty standard ratio throughout the country in relation to bathrooms and showers. In relation to the laundry, we have 2 laundries here. We have at least 12 washing machines, 12 dryers. There is no charge to use them. The houses that are next door, they have their own laundry inside of them, which is a real big perk for the people who live there. Your linen is, you have the ability to change your sheets each week. So everything's provided in your room, all your linen, all your bedding. You just provide your personal, like your clothes. You provide your towels. I don't think there's many halls that would provide a towel for you. So students, they set up their washing routines, but they do change their sheets. They have the ability to change their sheets once a week, and those are laundered off-site by the hall.
Yeah. And what's the alcohol policy? And also in terms of room allocation, how do you do it?
Well, the alcohol policy is, well, the first thing is, I would say of the 192 students each year, there's generally about 30 to 40 of them who are under 18, and you cannot provide alcohol to students that are under 18. So what I do is I actually write to the parents and caregivers of each of those students who are under 18 and get permission for them to be served alcohol at either formal events or tutor supervised events. I mean, most parents give permission, and students very much at the start of the year get involved in orientation events. A lot of orientation events have restrictions on students being under 18 if there's alcohol being provided. So what we try and do is to make sure that at the start of the year we don't have 2 separate halls. In relation to alcohol, I think we have sort of policies of moderation in relation to it. We have some alcohol at formal dinners, but we also provide non-alcoholic drinks. We have restrictions around you are not allowed spirits here. If you have wine, that you use a glass. Some students obviously have RTDs. Alcohol's in cans rather than bottles. There are time periods like study week, exam week, where we have a complete restriction on alcohol. So there's no alcohol consumed on site during study week. So that's twice a year, and exam week or exam weeks, which happen in June and November. So, I mean, most students are respectful of, being able, if they want to have a drink, to do it actually sensibly. And I mean, obviously, if they overstretch themselves, then they have to be prepared that there will be some consequences, which normally starts off with a meeting. I mean, if you went to the extreme, it could go to the fact that if they were not being sensible in the use of alcohol, when you sign up to be a student here, you actually sign the fact that we can send you to a counsellor to get an assessment, and that might happen twice a year. So it's about being sensible with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've hit the 6:30 mark, which means the webinar is finished. I know that there's maybe a couple of extra questions that haven't been answered. So, Stephen, are you happy for people to contact you or the hall directly?
Yeah, the best way to contact me is just simply email me at principal@rochester-rutherford.org.nz. I mean, you can contact me about anything. Like, I just finished with one of the questions that is very big on students' minds is the ability to pay fees. And so what we have here is when you get offered a place, you pay an $800 deposit. After NCA results come out in January, you make another payment. All these fees are actually on our website. Right, once you get here in February, if you think that your finances are such that you're going to struggle to pay your fees, some students set up automatic payments and they pay off the balance of their fees throughout the year, quite often using StudyLink money. But StudyLink doesn't start till you're actually enrolled at university. You can't use StudyLink money to make your January payment. But fees, it's just very much a discussion between the individual student and the principal, so that you work out what works for you and what works for the hall.
Very good. Thank you very much.
If you have any questions, just send me an email.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen, for your time tonight.
Thanks, Ryan.
And thank you everyone for joining the webinar for Rochester and Rutherford Hall. Good luck for your applications, and I certainly look forward to seeing you all here at UC next year. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.